everyone. Welcome to another Overrated Film Saturday. Apologize, this video is to be uploaded late. Unfortunately, I was relatively busy over the weekend. I made a note of it in my Thursday's video, but in case you didn't know, I was away and did not have time. But now I should be caught up. So without further ado, let me address what I wanted to talk about for this Overrated Film Saturday, and that is the film Elf. This one is interesting because it has been up there for a while as far as holiday films go. Like, I see it played every year on various channels. It's probably as popular as the Jim Carrey How the Grinch Stole Christmas film. That one gets played a lot around this time of year. And I think it honestly gets played a little bit too much. Same way that Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas gets played a little too much. And I wanted to kind of go over my reasonings as to why I feel this film's a little bit um, too, at least for me, a little bit too in my face, and I think is not as great of a holiday film as a lot of other ones that I have seen over the years. Um, and again, I don't think necessarily this film is terrible. It's not like this film kind of got under my skin all too much. But I think there is just certain kinds of parts that I think are a little bit more on the annoying side and also kind of the cliche side. Just certain parts of the story, like once you start really digging in, you can kind of see, like for example, Buddy, I believe, at least that's the Will Ferrell character's name, or technically he's the elf, hence the title, ends up in New York City. I believe it is New York City, if I'm not mistaken. Some big metropolitan city. And he actually ends up not knowing really where he is because he is supposed to be an elf that really works for Santa, even though he technically isn't an elf. And there's this whole little complicated thing that goes into explaining that. But it's just one of those kinds of adoption stories. Like, you see how a family kind of sort of adopts him since he ends up in New York City and doesn't have anywhere to go. But you see kind of, how the family that takes him in, the dad is like this super overworkaholic and, doesn't really care about his kid and blah, blah, blah. And, you just kind of see like sort of these kinds of similar family dilemmas. And the thing that also I think is a bother, at least to me, when it comes to this particular film, is I don't think it's actually that funny. It's really primarily supposed to serve as a comedy. And for the majority of the film, I didn't really find myself like laughing a whole lot. I don't know if it's necessarily the writing or if it's maybe a combination of the writing and Will Ferrell's performance, but there's just something about it that just kind of it just doesn't say timeless to me. Like this movie just doesn't give me that kind of charm or joy that I really look forward to around this time of year. I feel like a lot of it is just kind of supposed to be a little bit, sort of either been there, done that, or there's some parts of this film where I feel like other films executed certain parts or certain aspects that we would often associate with Christmas better. Like, for example, there are parts where Will Ferrell's supposed to act kind of like a child, and I felt like that didn't really work all that well to its advantage, especially considering the fact that I've seen other films that I felt captured that essence a whole lot better. So I think the problems that stem from this film again have to do with just the way in which it's represented overall, really. I mean, if you really look at it, it doesn't really have a whole lot going for it. It just kind of tries to shove in certain things, and it tries to be funny at certain points, like, it's really trying, but then it doesn't really come off that way. Um, and again, I know it's supposed to kind of be a joke that Will Ferrell is supposed to be, supposed to act like a child, but then at the same time he's an adult. So it just does kind of just doesn't rub me right. I mean, just a guy acting like a child. I just, that just doesn't seem all too, funny to me. It just kind of comes off as creepy, it doesn't really come off as like this is hilarious, Um, especially considering the fact that, for some reason, even though all of the other elves act more like adults than he does, for some reason he acts like a child. I don't get it. So, it kind of, a lot of things about this film just kind of don't, I think, hold up, or at least they don't provide I think, a good overall setup. Like, I don't think the whole setup that they had really with Will Ferrell of being this, uh, elf, even though he's really technically not an elf, and him acting like a child even though he's not a child, it just doesn't really, it just doesn't lend itself well. You know, I think had they just had him act like any of the other elves, or and then just maybe not be in on all of the things that kind of go on within our world and not on the North Pole, then it would have probably suited this film better. But I mean, it's sometimes the way in which these films get presented. I just kind of want to go back into the writing booth and just kind of go, no, I would not have done that. No, no way. So again, it's more of just the fact that, again, there's just parts of this film that just, I think, have the tendency to suck the audience out. Um, and I think, again, a lot of that has to do with the way in which the comedy is presented. Just, it just doesn't seem to hold itself up all too well. Um, Unlike something like Home Alone, for example, where uh, it has a certain amount of cleverness to it. Like, there was a certain amount of real effort and genuineness to it. And I didn't feel the genuineness, at least within this film. I thought a lot of it was designed to be more of a kind of commercialized, kind of Christmas movie. I guess sort of similar to maybe even Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. There's sort of a commercialistic kind of feel, at least, to this uh, particular film that I don't think really ultimately works out all too well. Again, I don't think there's a whole lot of magic. I don't think there's a whole lot of joy, or it's just kind of a standard Christmas film. It's sort of a similar way the Jim Carrey movie, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, is supposed to be kind of standard in the it's here, you know. I almost feel like there's other holiday films that capture the magic a whole lot better. And, in this one, although it maybe had some good ideas and good intentions to it, when I see how it's just all presented, I just think that it's a little bit too all over the place, at least. Especially when it comes to the plot. Again, not a whole lot of focus. And, you just feel like at the end of it, you just kind of watched you kind of watched a film with Will Ferrell in it that is holiday or Christmassy related, and not necessarily a Christmas film or a film that takes place around Christmas time that, again, takes the time that it has with it and utilizes it to its advantage. Not like something like, Die Hard, where even though it's ridiculous to have it around that time of year, it still kind of gets you pumped and into the holiday spirit, because there is just something that overall I think captures the audience's attention. And again, I think that has to do with the plot and of uh, people rooting for Bruce Willis since he's such a likable character. But here, I don't think there's a huge lot of likability to Will Ferrell's character all too much. I just don't see why they did certain things that they chose to do with his character. And I think, again, the fact that the plot is kind of all over the place and there's certain cliche elements to it, it just doesn't hold as much water, I think, unfortunately. But that's just my honest opinion. And again, I'm sure there's people who enjoy this film, and you are more than welcome to enjoy it. Definitely not against that at all. I'm just saying my honest opinion, and that's just really my honest opinion. I just feel like a lot of it is just a little bit um, just meh. It's just not as it just doesn't captivate me as much, and I don't really remember it all too much. And all I can, I think, remember at least from this film is just the fact that Will Ferrell was in it and he played an elf, and that's pretty much it. Uh, Even though he's technically not an elf, really. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say, though. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And hope to see you all in the next video. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. Even though Christmas isn't technically